Okay. Go ahead and tell me a little bit about how you felt about the lesson overall.
Well, I think that the lesson went pretty well, despite some of the classroom management issues because the kids are going crazy because of snow days and no schedule and early outs and all that stuff. I think that we got a lot done that I had planned to get done, and I think that we were more prepared for our concert after that rehearsal. So I think the kids and I both got something out of it.
That's good. Yeah, I could tell you were very in check with what you needed to get done, and I felt like you conducted your class period effectively. In reference to the screen behind your podium, what were some key pieces of information that you give the students routinely on a daily basis, not just that day?
Well, I always put my announcements up there, and a lot of kids just come in right when they get in the class before they even get their instruments out, and they check, what they need to have today. I always have if there's a change in lesson and band lessons, or if we have a concert coming up, I put reminders up about that. If they owe money for reads or something like that, I just put up a reminder on, hey, if you owe money for reads, you need to get that to me soon. And then I usually put up an agenda, which includes what we're going to do for our warm-up and what the music we're going to work on in order so that they can get that up before they start class. And then I also have our learning targets posted up there so that they know what we're going to be working on that day.
Cool. Were there trends that you noted about that class period, that specific class period?
Well, going back to the classroom behavior, I think that was a big issue, and it has tended to be that way the last couple of weeks. Just trying to get the kids to just settle down and sit in their seats and play their instruments. So, other than that, just trying to get the kids to play accurately. I think that sometimes we just do, I tell them to do something and then they try it and I'm not sure that they fully get it, or they, but I can hear that they are playing it how I want them to play it, and then it's I don't know if we have enough time to go back to that and we gotta get on to the next thing. So just, inaccuracy in some things.
Yeah, I noticed you were really good about planning and making sure that you wanted to cover certain things in that class period. You were very scheduled. You wanted to get, you started with measure 34, and then you wanted to go to measure 42, and then whole band, and then sections of the band. And I like that about how you were organized enough to really know what you need to focus on. The teaching practices that you used during the class period or that you use regularly, do any of those align with the district's professional development, what you've been working on in professional development?
Well, we work on two things in our school, and that's GRR, the gradual release, and authentic intellectual work. And as far as GRR, let's say we're working on playing a note short, which is called staccato in music. I model that for them, and then we do it together, and then they have to prove to me that they can do it. And it's harder in a group setting to tell if they're actually, if 90 kids are getting it, but in their band lessons it's much easier to tell, and that's where we can kind of tell if the gradual release is happening. Also for the authentic intellectual work, AIW, that's what it is. Our goal is to come up with more higher order thinking questions within the class, and just using more depth of knowledge and making sure the students are understanding what they're supposed to be in our classes. What else? There are some times that I know this sounds weird for a band class, but we work on elaborated communication and substantive conversation, because if the kids can have a conversation between each other, or we can have a conversation as a class and me, then they tend to learn more than just me standing up and lecturing them. And that, you know, so if they can like elaborated communication or substantive conversation is, I would ask a question, they would answer back, someone else would raise their hand to speak, and they would go off of what that student just said, and then it just kind of bounces around the room like popcorn.
Okay, cool. I did notice a lot of the graduate release being used when you were trying to get that. At one point you said you clapped and counted it, and then you had them do it out loud, and then even one point you said, okay, now check your neighbor and make sure your neighbor does it on their notes or on their music. So that was good to involve students in that. So specific to the activities you did, or just the teaching practices you use, what do you think really did engage the students at a high level? So you used some thumbs up, thumbs down, you used the clap and count, you used the dits and the does and the articulation examples.
Yeah.
What was something that you think that really engaged the students and clicked with them?
I mean, sometimes you just have to break it down even by section. If I know that the trumpets are struggling with this part on their notes or something of that nature, then I go to them, and I did that in my lesson. But like, let's take clapping for instance. The reason that we clapped is because they were not getting the rhythm, and we need to get the rhythm first before we can break it down into a smaller thing for them, you know, because when they're playing, they're thinking about the right note, if they're playing the right fingering on their instrument, and if they're playing the right rhythm. So just breaking that down to just rhythm really helps them. And as far as like the dit and the do, and if you can say it and they can say it the way I want it, then usually they can do that on their instruments, and it'll come through to me, you know, like if they're playing it short, or if they're playing it with an accent, or if they're playing it long, then if they can say it the way I want it, then they can usually play it.
Yeah, because their tongue is doing the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. You did mention that you spent some time, you had me count during the lesson how many times you were, you know, with the whole band versus just by an individual section, and you spent about the same time with the band. I counted 9 times that you practiced whole band versus 10 times with individual sections. So, I mean, you are doing some individualized instruction there.
Yeah, and it just kind of depends on, like, you know, a lot of individualized instruction happens when we're first learning music. So you didn't see a whole lot of breaking it up. There was a lot of group playing.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of depends. Like, we're getting to where our concert should have been yesterday, but it's scheduled next week, and you know, there should be a lot of group playing because we're preparing to play it as a group, and they should know their music fairly well by then.
Yeah. Was there anything that surprised you about the feedback that I gave you, or the notes? Like, I scripted your whole lesson. Was anything surprising to you in the observation?
Well, there's just some things that I didn't even know I say until you actually scripted it and I went back and watched. You know, like, I said, do I see gum back there? Because you're not supposed to be chewing gum when you play an instrument because it can hurt the instrument. Are you chewing on your spit? Or go spit out your gum. We don't want mice. It's like, you don't get mice from
real-world
gum.
application.
Yeah. So there. It's just nice to see the scripting because it's like, what? I really said that? So that caught me off guard.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? That was pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know if there was really anything else.
So as far as assessment goes, obviously formative assessment, you use a little bit of the thumbs up, thumbs down. Is there anything else you can do maybe to assess throughout the period, of not just, you know, like a yes or no answer, like correct rhythms, articulation, or notes? What are some other ways you can maybe assess throughout the period?
Well, I would just say as like, when I break it down into small groups, like trumpets, I can assess them, you know, there's 10 of them or whatever, I can assess them all at once. It's not necessarily individual, but even with the thumbs up and thumbs down, it's not necessarily individual either.
Yeah.
In a classroom of 90 because you make them feel like they're all being seen with their answer because they're doing this or they're doing this, but yeah, in reality it's like really you're doing it in chunks. So if I wanted to assess like if all the trumpets were playing the right note, I would have them all play at one time, and then I can tell if even one person's off because it just sounds
That makes
bad.
sense. Okay.
So just breaking it down into smaller sections. Or in pairs even, you know? Sometimes I'll just be like F sharp, F sharp, F sharp, and just point to them and have them play it really quick. But it's hard because you're trying to keep the rest of the band
Yeah.
engaged.
Yep.
So,
like the data I collected with you are working with individual sections or you're working with the whole band. Can you use that for something to help you? Like, is there anything that you can use that data for, or was it just more of a curiosity thing?
well, I was just curious because, I mean, I record the band like playing so I can hear it and prepare for the next rehearsal, but there's not a lot where I record an entire rehearsal. And so it just brought to my attention that I just need to pay attention to how much I'm working with the band, you know, like, I think that it was pretty good, like you said, it was pretty equal between working with small sections and the big band, but I'm sure if it was earlier on in this music that it would have been a lot of sectional work, and I need to just make sure that I'm keeping all kids engaged.
Yeah. So what would you do differently then next time if you were to do the same lesson?
Well, I think that I would have maybe played bigger sections because we are close to our concert. I mean, yes, it's good to break it down and figure out the details and stuff, but I was breaking it down and not like, we didn't really play big sections of the music, which is something at this point when you're so close to the concert that they need to not stop at measure 42 after 34 to 42, because then they just randomly stop there in the concert or so I would just say that I think that I just need to play bigger sections and not maybe focus on so many details.
Do you have any skills that you further develop because of this lesson, or something that you're curious about, maybe you need to learn more about?
Well, I mean, classroom management is always going to be a skill that I have to build. And again, going back to a really large classroom, it's hard to catch everything. But when the kids are very energetic and they don't have a set schedule for the last month or whatever, I just go in knowing that I have to be prepared. And it was just an extra crazy day that day.
You kept your cool very well, though. I liked your little pep talk at the end. Like, let's have a good week. We had a rough class. Let's have a great week. You know.
Yeah, I just hate for the kids to leave thinking
that
they had a bad class, but we have to have something to look forward to the next time.
Yeah.
So
I guess that if that is your growth area, let's kind of precursor into there. What are some like procedures that you have in place that kids routinely follow and they know that they're expected to follow every day?
Well, you didn't see it in the video because I didn't push record right away, but at the beginning of class every day I always have a 30-second timer up on the projector. And so right when I start that timer, usually kids are hustling to their seats, and if they're not in their seats, then they're tardy by that time. So that kind of signals it's the start of class. And then when I'm on the director's podium, they're supposed to be quiet. I mean, if I'm off the podium and are switching to a different song or something, then that's a time that they can talk to their neighbor, or they're 7th graders, so they're gonna have to get that. I have to make sure that I leave that in there. But the podium is sacred, basically.
How long does it take at the beginning of the year to teach them those things?
Quite a while. We only have band every other day, and I mean, like, by December I feel like they're getting and it seems like a long time, but we have marching bands.
Yes.
So that's a whole different skill. And then and then when we finally probably like really 2 months probably to get it down.
Hmm.
It's a long time.
Yeah. So, well, that answers my next question then. Anything on that projector screen required for students to read in order to be successful? You've mentioned the timer, and obviously the learning targets are helpful during that class period. Is there anything else on there that they need to know for that class period other than those things?
I mean, just to have their music in that order so that they don't have to be fumbling around.
Okay.
Sometimes I do put like a handful of students' names up there that they need to see me after class, or because I just need to talk to them individually, or
Mhm.
hey, you're going to have a lesson with Miss Davis today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so hopefully they do check that. I mean, typically they do because they know what's going on.
So, just thinking about how you handled the behavior, I counted that you corrected the classroom visiting 5 different times throughout the 45-minute period, which, I mean, isn't a whole lot. I think that is, for a 90-person class period, coming from somebody who's never taught that many kids, I'm very impressed. That was only 5 times. But how do you feel you handled the behavior? So, like, is that a normal type of addressing it versus
Okay.
like how you handled it, like verbally, like saying,
Yeah.
you need to be quiet. If you're the one talking, you need to stop talking. Were those normal responses? Do you think that they were nicer than normal, or do you think that they were maybe a little bit more harsh than normal?
I mean, I think it was fairly normal.
Okay.
The kid's behavior was not normal that day, but I think the way that I addressed it, I think that that's pretty typical. But you know, sometimes just standing on the podium and just waiting for them to stop talking because they eventually will get the hint.
Mm-hmm.
It helps, but I just need to be better about doing that.
I did like how you in a way though, I think you maximized time. So you had a lot to get done in that period, and because you didn't do that and you just waited and you addressed the situation, I had commented in one of my observation notes that I feel like you really used the maximum amount of time and you use it in your benefit. So in a way that was kind of in your favor for not doing that.
The more you can keep the instruments in their mouths playing, the less that they will misbehave.
Yeah. So, if the podium doesn't work and you don't want to just wait, what is something else you can do to maybe signify that you mean business and you want to get to it? Is there anything that you can?
Like, let's say like a saxophone player is talking, I will continue to finish what I'm saying to the band. That proximity. So if I go walk over to them and not really address it, but just, you know, look at them and be close to them, then they get the hint.
Yep.
You know, which it's hard because, you know, like the drummers are all the way in the back and I can't walk back there sometimes, because once I leave the front of the room, then the whole band will start talking. But that happens a lot. Or, you know, if I'm talking to someone over here and I just put up a hand and just, you know, because then it doesn't ruin the rest of the class, the class's experience. It just is telling them they need to be quiet.
Yeah. So, do you have any like goals? I know we talked a lot about classroom management and how this was a struggling period, and take the snow days out and take like all the weird scheduling that you've had. What does a typical period look like? How is this amplified as far as how many people talk?
Yes.
Like by a lot.
Very amplified.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
but I mean, it's been like that this winter just because it's been crazy. But yeah, what were you gonna say?
is there a goal that we could set that maybe you could measure if this doesn't improve, and if you need to change something, what you could do differently in the next few months to make that behavior change?
Like as far as something I can do, or as like recording myself and
Something you can do, yeah. How would you use a recording of yourself?
well, I can go back and watch it because, like I said, I don't do that very often.
Yeah,
I did that because, you know,
I asked you to.
yeah, you asked me to. So,
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, I'm just thinking, if like, say that it happens over and over, and like the period is even worse than it was in this situation. What would the band respond to if you just said, "Okay, everyone's just gonna put your instruments on the floor and we're gonna sit here in silence," like
Yeah, I mean,
you know, like that type of response?
mm-hmm.
Do you think that would just change for that period, or would they maybe reflect a little bit better? And
I think that would have an impact.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that it could change things for a couple weeks.
a couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm not sure. but
Temporarily.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it's not like I think that they would come in and realize that that's something that they're gonna have to change in order for us to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, having recordings and showing them, you know, how we sound is a big deal because they understand that the more they talk, the less work we get done. And then, you know, I have recorded them 3 weeks into our concert prep, and then I've recorded them 3 weeks out from our concert and showed them the difference, and it's like, wow, you know, that's a big deal, and that can show them that this is what can happen if we're successful,
Yeah.
or it can go the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Here's why we sound this way.
Yeah, that's good. Really allows them the chance to reflect too.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there any additional data that could be collected on that then? Other than how many times you have to redirect, or maybe specific data points that if I came back in and watched you that I could collect? Like specific kids or specific sections?
Yeah, both of those would be fine, I think.
Okay.
Specific. Yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to see a trend of there's more percussionists that talk, or more, you know, like, because the flutes and the clarinets are right in the front, and then as they go back further, it tends to just get a little bit more, they're more open to talking and misbehaving, so.
They don't have anything in their mouth to
Yeah.
take up space.
Yeah, true.
All right, well, I think that wraps it up. We will be doing an individual professional development plan.
Okay.
To be determined.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you.
Hey, that was 22 minutes.